Good morning, my creative friends. This is Dr. Minette Riordan, and this is Painting in Your PJs live with Minette, where I show up every morning, Monday to Thursday, from 5 or around 7 a.m. for about an hour and play in my art journal. And I'm not quite awake this morning. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh, my words aren't quite there, even though I've been up for quite a while and I'm on my second cup of coffee this morning. That's how we roll, casual and open to the experience of whatever is coming. And yesterday, in our first exploration of poetry and art journaling, we looked at this gorgeous poem by Kabir, which I really love. I'm going to just move that camera down a little bit, see if we can get a little bit closer and more focused. And today, good morning, Yvonne. This morning, I want to really play with a poem by Mary Oliver that I absolutely adore. And one of the things that I love to do, so this was all my leftover paint from yesterday. Also, I noticed that uh, these are sheets of magazine paper and they're coming out a little bit here. And I wish I had my paper tape. So, working in junk journals, sometimes you'll find that, pages are falling apart or need a little bit more love and attention. Oh, I love that page all by itself, so nothing might happen to that page. But what I've noticed is sometimes I have to reinforce the pages. Okay, so I love this is a center spread of one of the signatures. You can see the string here in the center, and it's some interesting paper. I kind of like the colors, but sometimes I want a little different format in my art journal than the traditional horizontal. So don't be afraid to turn your journals vertically and work in your journals in a little bit different direction. Good morning, Tori. Welcome, welcome. So this morning we're going to be working with the poem The Journey by Mary Oliver. This is one of my favorite poems. I have made a photocopy of that poem. And again, I'm working from this book, Risking Everything 110 Poems of Love and Revelation, edited by Roger Housden. You can find the words for Mary Oliver's poem, The Journey, just about anywhere online. I also found this page this morning. I might have to make a photocopy of this one. I love this style of hand drawing. It's super fun and relaxing for me, and it kind of almost goes with the words of the journey. So, thinking about that, and obviously it's too big for this poem. So I have pulled out a bunch of stacks of collage bits here to play with this morning. This is probably going to get stuck in here underneath that page. I've got my matte medium at hand, as well as I had a glue stick. I guess we're going to use matte medium this morning. And I often find my glue sticks floating around oh, there it is. My favorite Uhu stick, a nice big chunky one. I love this one. And I often find my glue sticks floating around the studio because Georgia thinks they are the most fun to roll around on the floor. So I'm going to start with collage. I may or may not use paint this morning. We'll see where we get to. Good morning, Judy. So I also wanted to maybe start with some writing this morning. I don't always do that live on the screen, and just feel like the thing with poetry and also with my own art journaling process is that when I take some time to do some journaling first, even if it's just capturing a few words, that it helps me to go deeper into the art making itself. And so to me, there's something really valuable about giving myself permission to do some writing on the page and then painting or collaging over that writing. And to me, again, I'm always looking for that curious, creative way to go deeper within myself. So I'm not looking to do a academic analysis of this poem. I did enough of that in grad school to last a lifetime. I'm looking for the parts of the poems that I find most meaningful and speak to me or have a message for my own life. So I'm going to share this poem, The Journey by Mary Oliver. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble, and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do, though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough, and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice which you slowly recognized as your own. And that's only the beginning of the poem because there is more. I didn't remember to photocopy. I'm like, there's a comma there. So let's try that again. All right, I am feeling a little bit off my game and disorganized this morning. So let's try this one more time. Let me find that poem, page 39. All right, I'm going to read this again and ask for you to bear with me as I stumble a little bit around here this morning. The Journey by Mary Oliver. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble, and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do, though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough, and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. The Journey by Mary Oliver. And to me, this poem is a poem for the caregivers, for those of us that spend too much of our time taking care of others and not listening to the call of the wild or the call of that own inner voice. I think it's such a powerful reminder that there are times when we have to step out on our own and remember that in any given moment, we can only save our own life. And with Mary Oliver's poem, the natural imagery always speaks to me. There's so much powerful, beautiful visual energy to take in, imagery to take into our art making. There was the imagery of the house trembling, the wild night, the road full of fallen branches and stones, the stars burning through the sheets of clouds, striding deeper and deeper into the world. So I get this clear imagery of a path and someone stepping onto a path and leaving so much behind them. And those were some of the things that kind of spoke to me. So I thought I would just play with some collage this morning and see what maybe I could create. And I must have printed this out at some point for something. There's this beautiful picture of this path, which is almost perfect on its own, but obviously much too big for this particular journal page here. So I'm just going to line this up with the edge of this page and the edge of that page, which are nice and straight. And I'm going to imagine that maybe this is going to be the background for my page. Now that might change because I have some other images that I'm really intrigued with as well. And part of me is wants this sort of there's some simplicity, right? Here's a woman on a horse riding off on that path. Good morning, Marion. Oh, thank you. You drew your dolphin play card today along with the empty room potential. Perfect way to shift your energy. Beautiful. I love that. I'm also really drawn to this image of the woman and the butterflies and the sun. It's a beautiful painting. The artist is Kay Kemp Art, and this is called Earth Prayer Transformation. This is also a really beautiful image that to me illustrates part of this poem. I was drawn to this gorgeous canyon painting. This came from some magazine. So this one's also really beautiful. And I have so many little bits and pieces of things. This little curious birdie made me really happy this morning. And this woman who was from another image that I used last week, having her portrait painted with a book and the horn, and sort of, looking very proudly, but not quite right. That one's not quite right. I was just drawn to the image this morning. I was drawn to the word visions. I've got some butterfly wings left from last week as well, and then just some different bits and pieces. I have another tiny image of a woman standing in nature with a path behind her, surrounded by crows. I love crows. And I was really drawn to this face and the expression on this face. This is from someone else's art journal, and I also really loved how she had stacked all these images and give that idea of opening. So I have lots of things sort of playing around, and this is how it works when we're working with intuitive collage. I have this gorgeous piece of paper with, I think it was Japanese writing, maybe Chinese, I can't remember. A friend of mine bought an old accountant's ledger on eBay with this gorgeous handwriting on it. Makes beautiful collage. And then I also have this sort of quirky image of this woman with her hand up and all of these doves. And she's kind of actually speaking to me the most in the moment. So I'm wondering what it might be like to create this kind of idea of this little bit of a stacked collage. It's almost like all these things are sort of, living in her imagination. In fact, it's called Flights of Imagination, which I really love. And so, if I'm thinking about this idea of setting out on a path to save the life, and I'm thinking now maybe I don't want that one, but to save the only life that I can, my own life, that what parts and pieces of these can we use? So I love this tree. It has a pen at the bottom. So I love the creative aspect of that. It almost feels like she's tiny at the beginning of this journey as she's just setting out. And this was a postcard that I painted at some point, and I love, as always, repurposing my own art. I'm kind of digging maybe just getting some collage down on the page. So when we're working with intuitive collage this way, I think we have to remember to just be in the playfulness of that. I could put this butterfly back together here. And something again about the word, the vision of the future and what might be coming. So things are starting to unfold a little bit here, but I want to cut this figure out because I'm very curious. I love her sort of like her hand kind of thrown up in the air. So let's just cut her out this morning. And I'm going to cut those little earrings off. So remember, you can always alter collage images, make them your own. I love her playful bun there. And I like that she's looking away. So when I think about, for me, some of the imagery of the Mary Oliver's poem, as this person striding deeper and deeper into the world. She's facing away from the camera or from the viewer's eye, right? And she's walking away from the house that's been holding her back, and she's walking towards her future, towards herself. And so I think it's important that this figure is looking away and not looking directly at the camera. And I'm going to take a second here and just fussy cut her hand out at least a little bit. And I woke up to snow again this morning, and then I came straight down to my studio and I went upstairs to make some more coffee. And I love Brad said this one time, and it just sticks with me. We're having these beautiful big flakes of snow, and it feels like living in a snow globe. We have lots of big windows. Okay, so this is interesting. This almost feels like a story evolving all on its own, just on this little card here, without maybe needing a lot extra. So what if I were to take all of that away and just have something that was super, super simple? So then it almost becomes her moving into the distance, and this is the person or the people or the energy maybe tugging at her, pulling her back, and so that energy of having to make that decision to move on. I do like these quirky little doves, so I'm going to cut one of these out too. So again, when we're playing with intuitive collage, it's almost like playing with paint, because there's that idea of being able to, I always say everything is paint overable. Well, the same thing with collage. Everything is movable. Even once you glue it down, you can glue something over it. So really trust your own creative process. And I was listening this morning while I was painting to a book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And it's a great book. And as I was reading it, I was reading a part where he was talking about making time, focus time, right? Making time for what I call deep reflection. And he was talking specifically about journaling and creating a journaling habit. And I think it applied to any creative practice. He said to do less than you want to do until you build the habit. What happens if we sit down and we enjoy a lovely long 3 hours of creative play? Then we want that every day, but it's hard to carve that out for most of us on a regular basis. And I love this idea of, if I say I want to work in my art journal or do some writing, that spend 15 minutes a day until it becomes a habit. And I thought that was such a powerful point, right? Like, I am so grateful I get to enjoy this long, luscious hour of time here. And that reminds me, I wanted to do some writing on this page as well before I started to glue things down, but I'm kind of on the path. And I tend to go back and forth between writing before and writing after. And this butterfly is kind of wanting to be on here, and this dove. So both animals with a lot of symbolism. Interesting that what I'm noticing here is these are all creatures about flight and movement, right? Creatures about flight and movement, and this idea of the path and opening up, about expansion. This definitely feels like that idea of vision And remember, we talked last week about, adding words, and sometimes it's just that one word. Oh, thank you, Julie. I so appreciate that. I love this hour of play. It serves me personally, and I love that I get to share it with others. And I'm almost feeling like maybe I want to put some gesso down over that page behind, cover some of that up. So this is coming together nicely. I love this idea of just sort of this opening and flowing, this sort of stepping out on her own. So I am going to set these aside for a minute because it feels like in the underneath here, it just wants a little something. I even love these pages, and I'm like, maybe I don't even want to cover those pages. So maybe I'm just going to go to a different page that's already white, and I think maybe that's going to feel a little bit better. And maybe I want to come in sometimes when I don't know what to write about. What I might do is simply to write the words of the poem on the page. When we take time to write a poem out longhand, we can often see new meanings, see new connections. So there's so many different ways to work with poems. And remember, this is not about doing a critical analysis like you did in high school and university if you took any English classes at all. But this is really about connecting with the language of the poem and seeing what's resonating in your body. What is speaking out to you? And for me, it's that last part of the poem that speaks so loudly. There was a new voice. And just taking a minute to get those words onto the page. Sometimes I find that I can take one line of a poem and write my own poem, that it's often, again, a way to just start my own journaling practice. And I'm writing big. I don't need to fill the whole page with tiny writing. And remember, your handwriting is another way of mark making, adding that visual interest to a page, even though this is mostly going to get covered up. And a lot of times when I'm journaling, what I discover is that I end up with more questions than answers. And I might be thinking about that idea of the people calling mend my life. And I might think about, who or what is tugging at me right now. What aspects of my life need saving? And where do I need to stride deeper into the world? So I can take some of that imagery from the poem and really make it my own. When do we know it's time to go? So the imagery in the poem speaks to the foundations of the house being shaken, and it's a wild night. So when do I know it's time to go, to leave home behind? And I can just sit with all of these questions. I don't even have to know the answers to the questions. But I find again that questions keep us in curiosity. When I'm in this intuitive collage, oops, that came out way too fast. In this intuitive collage process, I am not always looking for answers. Sometimes I'm looking for knowing, for inner connection to what's happening right now within me, what's missing, what am I not seeing or thinking about. And so sometimes these are just so powerful. And that's why I love integrating poetry. And especially if you think, oh, I'm not a super wordy person, or I don't know where to get started with the process, a lot of times just allow yourself to pick a poem that you love, any poem, and let the poem be the space of beginning. And now you can see I've covered over most of this, but not all of this. And I am going to grab a piece of scrap paper here. So I got way too much paint and I don't want to waste that paint or just wipe it off. So I've got this piece of paper that already has paint on it. So I'm just going to continue to build up the paint on this page and it'll get used for something eventually. So I like my mustard bottle idea, but the paint comes out a little fast and I have to really be mindful of that. Clean off the rest of this. I feel like I want to just push this back just a little bit. Oh, it's drying so fast. You'd think when it snowed it would actually add some nice humidity to the air. But it doesn't really seem to work that way. All right, so I got a little bit down there on the page. And I like this better. This is a white page because I really love the other two pages. There is a voice that doesn't use words. Listen, love that. So true. So true. And that's actually the theme of my retreat in May here in my studio is all about connecting to our inner wisdom. And we're going to create a beautiful art piece to honor our inner wisdom keeper. And it's exactly what we're going to be focused on, Marion. A voice that doesn't use words. I love it. And a sip of coffee there while that dries just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to set this over here for a second. And I'm going to come back. All these lovely pieces. So I love that this one kind of came together all on its own. So I'm going to get these little bits of collage down. Again, this was a, abstract mixed media piece that I created some other time. And it was just floating around in my stash. And I actually have one more spot open for my retreat, which is May 18th to 21st. I had one person who is not able to come. So I have one more spot to fill. All right. I want to get her on there, but I don't want to lose my sweet little birdie here. So we might lose a little bit of her arm and move her over a little bit. Remember, with the nice thing about starting with glue stick is that your images are movable. You can always go back and add matte medium over the top of things as needed. If you're going to paint over the top of your images, you definitely want to seal them with some matte medium. All right, that feels a little bit better. And sometimes remember glue stick, if you're thinking it's not sticky, you just need a little more glue stick and just to work it a little bit. Give it a little heat so it adheres a little bit better, and it doesn't always love sticking to backgrounds like this one that are already super painty and textured. And Mary and I got my box of 13 Horizon magazines yesterday, all from the 1970s, and I cannot wait to dive in. I opened the box this morning, and they've got some yummy, really different covers on them. And Georgia was so happy because she got a box, and she has been in the box all morning. All right. So the white just makes such a difference, right? I think I was being visually distracted before by the other colors on the background. And what I'm thinking about here is that vision is the thing I need to save my life, right? Like if I'm going to stride deeper into the world, I need a sense of the direction that I'm going. And I think this is, sort of she's looking off with curiosity. She's ready to go. She's got traveling companions to accompany her on the journey. So that story is really starting to unfold nicely here. And I'm so drawn to the colors of this gorgeous canyon image. And I love that I can still see a little bit of that handwriting over here as well. Although I'm wondering if this wants to be off to one side or the other. Get our butterfly wings. And I never mind things just sort of flowing off the page of a journal. So I don't mind things like hanging out bits and pieces, the sides and the top. So I want to be mindful of which side is the bottom of my journal. I don't want to lose too much of this beautiful picture either. And this may be the piece that sort of connects the two pages together. So again, you can see how I was inspired by the other artists sort of stacking of images, but really then making the page my own. So this is a great idea. It's what my friend Andrea teaches in Under the Influences, right? How can we sort of look at what other people are doing and use that as a jumping off place for our own art? And I really love this image too. So I'm going to cut her out of this background and see if she wants to be part of the picture here. And I am not going to fussy cut those little tiny fingers out of there. And when I look up closely at this image, the patterns of the fabric of her cloak are all covered in Zentangle patterns, which is super fun. I hadn't noticed that before. I always think these things are gonna like come together really quickly, and then there's this always this sense of more. All right, so we have all of these figures on this journey here, and one of these butterfly wings are behind her. I think I'm also drawn to her because she's the same colors as the rest of the image. And I'm thinking this butterfly is going to need some color, and maybe it's going to get the sort of monarch orange, and I'm going to have that orange repeated through my piece here. So again, I'm wanting that pop of orange to tell that color story, and it's going to help pull the viewer's eye. I've got some orange here as well. There's even a little bit up here. And so I think if I just get some orange on those butterfly wings, it's really going to make this piece pop. and I need to stick those wings together as well. And I'm just going to do that with some washi tape for the moment. And I think I also am going to go ahead and glue this piece right into my journal. This is nice and dry. This is again why I love making my own background collage materials, or this looks like it's just on a little piece of watercolor paper from some play session, and having stuff on hand like this. So images already sorted, our own painty backgrounds, whether we're painting them in our directly into our journal or separately to collage in. Just want to really get that glued down on there. This was a piece from, must have been a gel printing session. And Julie, I'm so excited I get to see you twice this week. We have, I don't know, close to 18 people, I think, coming to our happier hour on tomorrow night. Super excited. And I get to see you at lunch on Thursday. It's going to be a social week for me to have 2 networking events when I haven't been doing much of any of that, to be getting out into the world a lot more. And I'm going to go ahead and get this piece down as well. And then that can be drying while I get some color on my fly. And I think I'm going to have that tuck right underneath and go right across the seam of that page, because I want that story to feel continuous and not like it's 2 separate pages. And if you find it hard to work in your journal because your pages are popping up, these little clips, binder clips, are fabulous tools to have around until you can really get things to start to lay flat on their own. So I use those a lot in my journals. Okay, so let's get our butterfly painted up here. And let's try some of this. This is just an inexpensive Artist Loft metallic orange. All right, 18 is the magic number for the week. I love it. And because this has this beautiful line drawings on it already, there's not a lot else I need to do to the butterfly, although it feels like it would be fun to maybe go in and just black it up just a little bit to make it feel a little more monarchy in appearance. I have not seen any butterflies yet. It's definitely still too cold for the butterflies. All right. I have lids on all of my water to keep the cats out of the water. And then I always forget to take the lids off when I'm ready to paint. And I'm just going to stick that over that orange so that I don't get orange paint all over the front of my nice handmade journal here. Okay, that's better. It needed the color on there for sure. So now it's all starting to come together. And this is one I might spend a little fun playtime after this is completely dry, maybe with my Poscas. I might bring some of these other colors and pull them into that story a little bit. And I'm feeling like I just want to put, even though I'm going to glue all this down, then I'm going to just take a little piece of washi tape here and tape these guys together to just give it a little more integrity on the page. Get orange paint again everywhere. All right, so let's get some glue stick. And so this guy, this is just on plain printer paper, so it's a little bit fragile now that it's wet. So I'm just going to be a little careful with that. And this is one I'm thinking I'm going to come back in over the top of it with matte medium to get it nice and really flat on the page. And it's just a little bit, you can see just a little bit of shimmer in those wings. Again, being mindful that this is okay to hang out over the edges this way, but I don't really want it hanging out of the bottom down there. All right, so having those be separate feels good as well. Again, there's a journey of flight and movement, a sense of something unfolding and emerging. And I can tell I'm going to want to come in and maybe add some color here to make this really feel like it flows and it's not so disjointed. And this one little edge keeps wanting to curl up on me and not stick. Excuse me. All right, so it's coming together. Get all these other bits and pieces out of the way. Sometimes my space gets cluttered and I need to just move things out of the way so that I can see them. And I'm almost thinking, I love this canyon. No, I really do love the dove on there. It feels like it needs that dove is part of the story that's emerging. Yep, definitely wants the dove on there. It's interesting working, like being able to sort of look down at what I'm working on, but then looking at what's on the screen as well just gives me a different perspective. Definitely noticing I'm going to want to come in and bring some of these colors back into this butterfly, which I'll do a little bit later. I think all my Poscas are over on the other side of the studio, where I was working this morning on my 100 Days of Artsy Animals, which I'm having a lot of fun with. But I think even coming in with just some little pops of white, but apparently not with this Posca. I go through so many of these. Let's try that one. I think that's a new one. And just coming in with some little pops of white are going to brighten this up nicely. And make the butterfly again feel like it's my own. And these were just some free butterfly templates that I had printed out for, I think we used them at our Andrea and I's last retreat last year. This is still a little bit damp on there, but already even just that little bit is helping that to pop out. So it may not need a lot of color, but apparently I do need to wait for it to dry a little bit more. Interesting, on this printer paper, it's not drying that fast. So I'm going to let that dry. But already I'm noticing more of that story sort of flowing back up on the page there. And I'm going to want to continue these colors. So I'm being maybe drawn to some of this purple a little bit. But I have one little tiny bit of purple down here. So I'm feeling like maybe there's going to need to be some just a little touches of purple. So again, I have that story moving, but right now I have this sort of orange that's kind of moving my eye up, and I've got these little bits of reds in here as well. So I want the colors that I'm using and the imagery to create a flow from the page so that we're starting here and everything on the page is moving our vision upwards. So learning to use color as part of the story. Right here it is part of the journey and the path for sure. And again, I know those words are under there. I don't need to see them. I'm also starting to think about, what do I want to do with the poem itself? I do like to make sure that I tuck those poems into the journal or near by so that I can remember. And I might even come in and do a little writing here on the page. So maybe we're just going to pull that purple frame all the way down here. And that's going to make that purple flow all the way around the page. And I still have that little edge of white over here as well. So we're just going to frame this whole thing in purple. And here I'm going to let it just flow right over onto the edge of that image. Make it look a little more integrated. I'm liking the way it's framed. It's interesting. It's almost like this one is this funny little like photo snapshot, and it takes her a while to break out of that into the more open expansiveness of what's above. So again, it connotes that idea of a journey and that unfolding of the journey. All right, and now I'm thinking I'm going to bring just some little bits of that purple maybe onto our butterfly there. Maybe just a few little spots. Again, it's not that we need a lot of anything anywhere, but just that moving that color around different pages. And the end of your paintbrush is a fabulous tool for making dots. So don't be restricted to just the tips, but also the ends. You know, I'm a fan of playing with your tools. All right, so I'm gonna have to do a little work, I think, to get this little edge because this watercolor paper is super stiff. And I think my butterfly needs some antennas. It doesn't feel complete. But again, I love this story that unfolded across this page. with our poem. And I know one thing I want to do is maybe find the words to the poem and get them all on one page. And I know if I just do a Google search, or I think it's poets or poetry.org is one of my favorite resources. And I know they will have the words to this poem on the page. And I want to think about how I want to tuck that in here. And one thing that I might do, maybe I'll show this tomorrow, is this little book needs a pocket. Thank you, Blanca. Good morning. And if I put a little pocket in here, I will be able then to tuck the words in, and I can even create a little envelope or pocket that would fold in and out of this page. And sometimes it's really fun. Where did I see it? So I have a nice piece of vellum here, and vellum is great for using to make sheer envelopes. So maybe tomorrow we'll look at how can we make a envelope to tuck some things into. But I'm pretty happy with this page at the moment. Thank you. They are delicious, aren't they? I love orange and purple and blue and orange together. And I can see where it needs a few little more details with my Poscas, where I'm going to maybe want to come in and just add a few more marks. And I think what I'm feeling right now is I want to come in and add some of my own handwriting on here. And that last line of Mary Oliver's poem, Determine to Save the Only Life You Could Save. Determined to save the only life you could save. So what if we just came in and added that to the page? And that probably would have been better with a gel pen, but this is to make it a little smaller. But I love having a little bit of my own handwriting both underneath and at the surface of the page. And I can see I'm loving this white, and so I'm thinking that the tips of these butterfly wings, they have just a little touch of white on them. They're going to pop out from help the butterfly pop out from the page. And it's not going to need a lot else. That's feeling pretty good. But again, once I have this white Posca in my hand, I can get lost for hours of just, continuing to add little marks and details. And again, just this idea that this lower page here is just this fun little snapshot of her looking off into the possible potential future, right? Like this is stepping into the wild, and there's kind of nothing wild about her. She's got on kind of, this little jumper and her hair in a neat bun, and she had earrings and a bracelet. And then there's this casual hiking boots, and then this totally expansive, gorgeous unfolding happening up here. So again, starting with something as simple as a poem is a wonderful way into a story. A wonderful way into a story that is uniquely our own, that gives us a snapshot of where we are. It's why this is a very intuitive process of knowing and unfolding and seeking and discovering. All right, and with that, this feels complete for the moment. Might need a few specks of color in that butterfly, but overall, I think that story is complete. I love that, Blanca. That's beautiful. So thank you everyone for joining me for another session of painting in Your PJs live with Minette. This is a happy, happy little page. I always love how it all comes together too, Tori, and I never know when I am starting how it's going to all come together. And I'm thinking for tomorrow, I'm going to do a beautiful poem called Love After Love by Derek Walcott. I'm saying his name right. And it's a beauty of a poem. So if you want to take a sneak peek at this poem online ahead of time, we're going to do Love After Love by Derek Walcott. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning with more poems and more creative play. Oh, awesome, Julie. It'll be a fun one to play with. Have a beautiful day. Goodbye, everybody.